Alright, so I've been thinking about stagnation and how that can end up being a poison to a lot of live service games, especially a game like Honkai Star Rail where it updates itself every 6 weeks for the most part. There has been a growing sentiment by certain individuals in the community in regards to Honkai Star Rail. I believe a mentality is if a player has a favorite character, they should be able to constantly use their favorite character. If they're not able to consistently use their favorite character, they feel the game is poorly designed because they as a player are being punished for using their said favorite character. Then you have individuals on the other end of the spectrum who have more of a mentality of, well, if the game is providing all this different kind of variety, but the content never justifies us using that variety, that in itself is poor game design because then it becomes variety for the sake of variety. Me personally, while I am more on the crowd of having variety for a justified reason, I don't believe either POV is wrong. I think both of these POVs are valid in their own ways, and I just want to make that super clear. Now, when it comes to a game like Honkai Star Rail, it has to continuously change. It has to continuously shake things up because if not, it will lead to a lot of players getting burnt out quicker and getting bored quicker. Now, the frequency of how often a game needs to shake things up or how often it needs to make changes really depends on a wide variety of factors. For starters, it depends on the game nature in itself, how much flexibility is there with each respective character. Another aspect is how often is this game getting updates? And what I mean by that is there are certain IPs out there that don't get updates that often. They may get a new edition every couple of years, and I will say this, the more frequent a game releases updates, the less likely it's going to be able to get away with stagnation. There is a correlation between the two, but how much that correlation plays really comes down on a per case basis. Finally, there is the element of the target audience. And what I mean by this is for some games, they will have a strong cult following. Let's take the Persona games for example. Even if they don't release a Persona game constantly, Persona has carved its own niche and it has its own dedicated audience. So even if they were to release a game, Persona game, and there's not significant changes, the core audience is probably still going to play it because it's not like there's a Persona game coming out like constantly. On the other end of the spectrum, let's take, say, a Call of Duty game. There's a Call of Duty game every single year. So the chances of burnout are significantly higher if there is a lack of change and advancement in those said titles. When it comes to Honkai Star Rail specifically, our characters basically have 3 functionalities that are universal: a basic, a skill, and an ultimate. Now, for some of these characters, they may have more aspects in their kit, like a follow-up of some kind, but every character falls underneath that archetype. So for each individual character, because there's a lack of options, the chances of burnout are going to be a little bit higher in comparison to, say, playing a single-player game using a character like, say, Bayonetta, for example. Sure, Bayonetta is the only playable character in the original Bayonetta game. However, she has a wide variety of weapons that she can use that will give variation in her playstyle and her approach to combat. This flexibility helps keep the gameplay loop from becoming boring. Another aspect that I do want to focus on and briefly discuss is if a player could be comfortable using the exact same character all the time, no matter what, this doesn't help miHoYo's pocketbooks at all from a business aspect. miHoYo, at the end of the day, they want you as the player to pull for new characters, whether it's new supports or new DPSs, really just depends. So normally miHoYo has 2 ways of forcing players into a position of doing this. Either they make the content more difficult or they make the content more restrictive, as in the new content counters out toolkits of older characters. And we've kind of already seen this to some extent, like with Flame Nikador, for example, being a counter to Jiao Shou because obviously the clones don't attack, so Acheron's not getting the stacks like she normally would off of other enemies who would attack. That's just an example. I knew when I picked up Honkai Star Rail, I already accepted the reality that yeah, there are going to be certain characters that I will play for a certain length of time, and then the day will come to where I will no longer play those characters. This is no different from Honkai Impact 3rd, and it's almost true in Genshin Impact as well. If the theater mode didn't exist, the same thing would apply to that game as well. Now, I would say for the players who do not want to be punished for playing their favorite character, I would probably suggest seeking out gacha games that have been out for years, and there's evidence of those said players still using like year 1 characters in certain pieces of content and having success with them. Those might be gacha games more up your own personal lane, but I don't believe that Honkai Star Rail is going to be that game. When it comes to different playstyles and things along those lines, miHoYo, they're going to continuously introduce or expand new playstyles or expand on pre-existing playstyles. That's just how things are going to be in this particular game. And I think moving forward, the biggest balancing challenge will be making sure that the particular playstyle styles have some form of relevance and get thrown a bone here and there. So take for example T.O.T. Every now and then we get Fantalia in Apocalyptic Shadow, an amazing boss to use for T.O.T. And then outside of that, in current pure fiction, I think Cocolia is like really the best setting for T.O.T. teams. And I think the last time T.O.T. was actually a strong option was in 3.0 on the Cocolia side. Correct me if I'm incorrect. Pokemon is one of the biggest IPs in the world, spanning literal decades. With this being said, this is also an IP that has hit some heavy level stagnation in my opinion. And due to this, it created an opportunity for a game such as Power World to really pop off and have its own level of success. Pokemon was not delivering a different enough of an experience for some players. It makes total sense to me why Power World ended up being successful to the degree that it ended up being. Unfortunately, Nintendo would later on sue Power World for the Pokeball throwing mechanic, which is very unfortunate to say the least. One thing that I will say about the Pokemon IP, bringing it up as an example, is when there's not healthy competition, an IP can end up forming a monopoly. And when it forms a monopoly, there's a lot greater of a chance for it to hit stagnation and not continuously challenge itself to switch things up. Now, of course, this does not apply to all IPs out there, but it works for the example of Pokemon. As gamers, as consumers, it is always in our best interest when there are multiple high quality options on the table. Therefore, when there's multiple high quality options, each of these individual companies have to stay on top of their game and continuously make quality of life improvements to their iterations of their games to maintain their audiences. Otherwise, they will lose them out to heavy competition. We have seen this to some extent with Genshin Impact. There are some players who used to play Genshin Impact that shifted over the Wuthering Waves because it reminded them enough of Genshin while still providing them with a different enough of an experience. Probably one of the biggest reasons why some people have shifted away from Genshin Impact is simply due to lack of quality of life improvements. When Honkai Star Rail released, it didn't release as a monopoly. There was already some pretty heavy competition when it came to the gacha space because there's plenty of gacha games that are turn-based. Some common examples are going to be Fate Grand Order and Epic 7. So from the get-go, Honkai Star Rail devs had to act like they were hungry. And while at this point, some players feel like there hasn't been effort placed in Honkai Star Rail, I personally don't see it. I don't agree with it. I think that the dev team are still putting in work on a per patch basis, and I see the improvements that come on a per patch basis. But this is just me. I know everyone's standards are going to be a little bit different. Honkai Star Rail cannot afford to hit stagnation. It can't afford it at all because, again, there are plenty of turn-based gacha games out there, both in the past, the present, and there will be more in the future as well. With that being said, though, I do think Honkai Star Rail, in my opinion, is one of the better gacha offerings out there in the space. I personally like this game. I enjoy it. I play it, and I look forward to the improvements that are going to come along the way. As I was going through the process and recording this video, I had to remind myself that change is inevitable. And what I mean by that is products like Honkai Star Rail are naturally going to go through changes for the better or for the worse. As time goes by, Honkai Star Rail will have new competitive gaming competition. There could be new technology that would put Honkai Star Rail in a position to where that technology needs to be taken advantage of. Or it could just simply be the developers gain more experience and something that they weren't able to do in the past, they are now able to do in the present. When I think of the human condition, I think the easiest example that I could think of is comparing an adult to a child who went to public school. A lot of adults don't associate with a lot of the people that they did when they were in elementary school, middle school, or high school. And it's very natural for people to come and go out of a person's life. If a person does manage to make it to old age, then more than likely their physical strength and or their endurance is going to be weaker in comparison to when they were in their 40s, for example. However, from a mental aspect, at least that individual has the opportunity to continue to grow if that's what they choose to do. Their viewpoints on money, relationships, various things going on in the world may change as they gain more experience and as they get older. This is, of course, just my opinion on things. I just want to reiterate, change is kind of inevitable, and change does not always inherently mean a good thing. For example, there is a big issue with the usage of AI art or AI voiceovers that is a hurdle that the gaming industry and the artistic industry has to address and get over that hurdle. And what the end results of that will be, only time will tell. I think I've covered everything in this video. I apologize if I didn't have my thoughts too concise and well put out. If you have taken out the time to watch this or listen to this, I just want to say thank you for your time. You be safe out there. Deuces.
Time to ship as your dragon, white tiger, less for this. Lend me your strength.
Show me what you never hesitate! I won't do it. I venture forever. Triumphant! Zigzag! Victory is inevitable!
I get it! Now watch this! Lend me your strength.
Fangs and claws got no. Fear is not fear!